tutorial, I'm going to show you a really quick and easy way to create splash photography for your product shots, or you can actually use all the principles that I'll share with you today for your portrait or lifestyle images. You can also use speedlights to create this effect, and if you want to take your images to the next level, I'll also show you how to create a simple cinemagraph using these principles. Now, when you're thinking about splash photography, why would you want to use it? Well, have a look at this image here. You can see that it looks quite flat, and then just by adding splash, look how dynamic the image looks. Now, to create splash photography using daylight, the basic gear you need is a DSLR or a mirrorless camera, and then you want to have a glass vessel that you'll be shooting the splash in. So it can be a glass, it could be a large vase, or you could even use a fish tank if you want to create the sort of photograph larger objects. It's essential that you've got your camera on a tripod, and you need sunlight. So it's not enough to have to shoot on an overcast day. You want to have good sunlight, and you want to position your product so that it's backlit, because it's the backlighting that's actually going to define your water droplets. Now, because you're going to be photographing objects that are going to be moving around your glass or container, whatever it is you're shooting, it's really important that you compose your shot. So set it up the way that you want it to look, and then once you're happy with the composition, focus on your glass. And then I recommend that you use you avoid using a shallow depth of field. I suggest you start with something like f8. Get a focus on the glass. Once you've got your focus, I want you to lock focus. And the way you lock focus is that you turn the autofocus off and make sure that you do not change the focal length or change the position of the camera, or try not to knock it in any way. This is going to give you the opportunity to create multiple exposures that you can merge together in post-production, and I'll show you how to do that at the end of this video. So focus locked, absolutely essential. High shutter speed of 1/1000th of a second or higher. And also, you might want to weigh your tripod down a little bit so that it doesn't move around. So you can actually put something heavy, or a shopping bag or something with heavy items in it, so that it's really rigid and it doesn't move around a lot. Now, optional extras you can have is a remote trigger. So that's going to help from causing camera shake. And the settings that I recommend is that you shoot at a shutter speed of 1/1000th of a second or faster, and you set your shutter to burst mode, so high speed burst mode, so that when you press the shutter, it's going to take 5 frames at a time in very quick succession. And that way, basically, you just press the shutter, and then you can time it so that you can drop the objects into the glass, and you'll get a few frames where you've got nothing there, but then the camera actually will capture the objects falling, and then you'll be able to capture the splash. So here's my raw image that I've imported into Lightroom, and to edit this, it's really quite simple. This is a one-shot take. So what I did is I actually had 4 bits of lime that I was dropping into the water over and over again to capture the splash. And it's really using the continuous shutter makes this so easy. You'll definitely get a number of good frames depending on how long you're prepared to repeat the process. So have some fun with it and experiment. And like I tried dropping them into the water. I tried like throwing them in the air. I did like numerous different takes. So basically, to edit this, what I do is you'll do a white balance of the image, and then I'm just going to do an auto white balance for this instance, and then what I do is I like to add black. Okay, so what I'm doing is holding the Option key on a Mac, Alt on a Windows, and just sliding in and adding like a good amount of contrast. And then for this kind of image, when you've got water splashes and you want to really highlight them, this little slider here, texture is your friend. And I don't mind cranking it up because you can have a look. Let me just come in. I'll come in tight on some of the splashes there so you can see exactly what's going on. And have a look at how that really makes them pop. Now, it also makes the noise in the background pop. So remember that we're shooting outside and we want to have a really fast shutter speed. And I also wanted to have a little bit more depth of field. So I was using my 100mm macro and I went for an f-stop of f4.5 and I wanted to have a fast shutter speed. So I've got 1/1250th of a second, and so I needed to crank up my ISO to allow me to get that shot. So just remember that you're going to be shooting, you need the fast shutter speed, otherwise because the items are falling so quickly, it's going to be really hard to even like as I was shooting at this faster shutter speed, I still didn't manage to get everything perfectly sharp. But that's the beauty of this sort of photography, because I think it adds life to the image and it makes it look a lot more realistic when you have that movement. So don't worry too much about that. But I did manage to capture these water droplets at that shutter speed. I probably could have shot faster to see the difference, but I kind of like having that life and a little bit of movement. So to edit these drops, so I'll just come in a bit closer. You can see texture is your friend, and I also like to add a little bit of clarity there, and you can see that they really pop. So I'll just show you before and after. They really jump out. I don't mind the noise in the background for this. The other thing that you want to be aware of is that if you really want these water droplets to stand out, then it's a good idea to have just a plain background or something that's not too busy, because otherwise you're not going to see the water droplets. So a dark background, you can even, if you want to, just put some paper or roll paper, or use the black side of a reflector behind the glass, so that you'll really isolate those water droplets a lot better. So that's pretty much the edit that I will do. So you can see before and after, and that just really makes the water drops stand out. So that's just a one take basic edit. All right, let's take it up a notch. So this image was created using 2 speedlights, and it's a combination of several images. So to create this kind of splash photography, what I've got is my mirrorless or DSLR mounted on a tripod. I've got a board as a background, my glass on the top. I'm using a black cutter as a background. I've got my AD200 and a second speed light with a grid spot for the front light. I have a diffuser placed in front of my AD200, and I've also, next level, I've used a trigger for this. So I've got the MyOps trigger, and then I've also got a laser pen mounted opposite the trigger, and that creates a laser beam. And what happens is when I drop the lemons and they hit the laser beam, it breaks the beam and the camera fires and you capture the shot. So it takes the guesswork out. So here's the setup for real. So you can see there's my speed light mounted in front. That's lighting the lemons from the front. And then behind, at kind of a 45-degree angle, I've got my AD200. You can see it there. And I've actually just placed a diffuser in front of that light just to soften it a little bit. And it's a very, very simple setup. So settings for this, I'm shooting at 1/200th of a second, ISO 100 and f16. Now you can see the laser beam here, and whenever I break that beam, it's going to fire the flash. And so basically all I need to do is drop the lemon and boom, I get an exact splash every single time. So it's an ideal way to shoot splash photography. It takes the guesswork out. The trigger's pretty easy to set up. There's a cord that goes into the side of the trigger and it attaches to the camera. And basically all you need to do is line the laser up so that it's hitting the sensor of the trigger. And then whenever I break the beam, the camera will fire. The trigger that I'm using is a Myops trigger. The laser that I'm using is actually a pet toy that I got at a supermarket for about $5, I think. And the other thing that's missing that you might want to consider buying is an extension cord for the attachment from the camera to the trigger, because the one that comes with the trigger is actually only about 10 centimeters long. So I actually got like a 5-meter one for I think about cost me $20, and that's well worth it, because you can see in the setup that I've got here that my trigger is actually quite a way away from my camera. So that makes all the difference. Well worth investing in. Okay, so the process. First frame I take is I want to make sure that I have no ambient light in the room. So I've set my camera to ISO 100, f16, 1/200th of a second. Then I'm turning on my backlight, which is the AD200, the Godox, which is behind at a 45-degree angle, and take my first frame. Now you might have to tweak the angle a little bit, but what I'm wanting is to capture that nice edge of the light. But you can see that I've got a piece of lime in there just so I can see what it looks like, and obviously it's too dark. So once I'm happy with how the backlight works, I'm now going to bring in my top light, which is that second speed light. And I've got a grid attached to it. Now the reason I've attached the grid is the grid's going to give me a narrower beam of light. I don't want light going everywhere. I just want to put a little dook of light onto that lime and really light it up. So the backlight is giving the bubbles all the definition, and the front light is purely there. It's fill light to just bring the limes that are in the glass to life. Now the power of the lights is going to vary depending on the aperture you choose, the lighting situation you have inside, a whole lot of factors. But basically the backlight, the AD200, was probably twice the power of the Speedlight, and the AD200 I was using was at 1/16th power, and the Speedlight at the front with the grid was at 132. The best thing you can do is experiment. Just start at maybe 1 eighth power and go up and down from there. Take a test shot, take a look, and figure it out as you go along. This is how you build a shot, and it's going to be how you make all your shots from here on in. So do it one light at a time. Once you're happy with how the backlight works, then you can start bringing in that second fill light and getting that right and just tweaking as you go. Once I'm happy with the lighting, then I just swap the glass out, have a clean glass, make sure it's nice and clean, and you use a microfiber cloth to get rid of all the little dust particles, and then I'll pour fresh mineral water in and wait till the bubbles settled a little bit, and then I can start. I've got my trigger set up, and I'm also adjusting the delay. So I start with no delay, and then play around so that I can get various different splashes, and then it's just a matter of having fun. And so the great thing about these triggers is you can be really precise in where you position the lemons or whatever it is that you're dropping into the water. So I can make this, I can time the splash for exactly the right moment. Once I'm happy with, and I've got a good variety of splashes, and I'm, it might take about 10 or 20 frames, so I've got a good collection. The next thing I've done is just got some little bamboo skewers, and then done a whole series of images around the glass where I put the lemon wedge onto the skewer and then just take several different plates where I've got the lemon in the exact position that I want it in. So even if you don't have a trigger and you're just doing trial and error, like you can drop the lemon and you just need to time it, you would need a trigger for that. Then you can do it that way, and then do this next stage where you get the extra plates so that you've got lots of lemons, so you can merge those images together and create a great looking shot. But I found using the skewers makes it really easy for me to place the lemon exactly where I wanted. And finally, following the exact same protocol as what I showed you with the daylight. So the first thing you do is, once you've got your lighting right and everything is lined up, you want to make sure that you're happy with the composition. Then you focus on the glass. Once you've got your focus locked in, turn the autofocus off and make sure that you don't move the camera, don't change the focal length, don't change everything, so that then it's much easier to combine these images in post. And I'll show you how to do that now. All right, so to edit these images, I've got a number of selected. So I really like this splash here. I like the position of this lemon, and then I've just gone and selected a variety. So these are the images where I've got the lemon wedge on a skewer, and you can just see my hand in there, and I've got selected a couple where I actually like the position of the lemon. So what I'm going to do first is just edit these in Lightroom. So I'm going to give it a nice black. So I'm holding down the Option key on a Mac, Alt on a Windows, and I'm just going to add a little bit of black, and I'm going to ramp up the texture. You can see how that makes a huge difference to the look of the shot, just bringing up the texture there. I'm going to give it a little tweak of clarity. Clarity, just like the crunch in the midtones. Look at that. Look how those water droplets just sparkle now. And that's pretty much it for this. And then what I'll do is, with the first one selected, I'm going to hold down the Shift key and select the last one. So now I've got all 5 images selected. And if I hit the sync button, you'll get a little dialog box that asks you, do you want to copy all the settings from the first image onto the other 5? And I'll say synchronize, and now every single image now has the exact same settings, which is really important. And you can notice that because I was shot on a tripod and I made sure that I had that autofocus, I focused with using autofocus, then I switched the autofocus off. So it didn't matter what I waved in front of the camera, it would always focus in the same spot and every image is exactly the same. So that's really important. You got to be careful too when you're dropping things into the glass that the glass doesn't move. So just maybe even if you put a little mark on the ground, that helps. So with all my images now edited, I'm going to select them all, right click, edit in, open as layers in Photoshop. All right, so Photoshop will open all of those in a nice little stack for me. All right, and here we go. And there we are. So I've got my big splash at the top, and then I've got the lemon, and then I've got my other lemons, the floating lemons I call them. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I just want to make sure that there hasn't been like any little slight movement. So I'm going to select all my images. So I've just selected the top one. I'm holding down the Shift key and I select the bottom one. And now I've got all those layers selected. I'm going to come down to Edit, Auto Align Layers. You get a little dialog box. It's this first one here, Auto, that we're going to check. Basically, what I'm telling Photoshop is I want you to make sure that all of these are lined up in exactly the same position. Hit OK. And Photoshop does some thinking and checking, and it's just make sure that every layer looks the same, and it'll look at sort of the main image here, which is the glass. Takes a little second. And there you go. And there wasn't, you can see there's just a slight movement there. So there was a couple there where maybe I might have just knocked the glass a little bit as I was dropping lemons in and out. But now they're all nicely lined up, so I can uncheck them all. Okay, this is where it gets really cool. It's as easy as this to merge these images together when you've got a black background. Okay, so what we're going to do is with the first layer selected, I'm going to come up to my blend modes here and I'm going to change my blend mode from normal to lighten. And did you see what happened? Have a look at that. So I've got normal there, lighten there, and basically it will highlight using the blend mode the difference in this image with this image, and basically that little slither of lemon, that's it there, is now merged. How good is that? It's that easy to merge these images together. And then I go down to the second image, change the blend mode to lighten, and voila, I've got my image on a stick, and I can easily fix this. Just stay with me. So all right, I'm going to move down to my next image here, change the blend mode to lighten, and there's a clash here. I don't like that, so I'm actually going to ditch this image here. I don't need that. All right, so now I'm at the fourth image along, change the blend mode to lighten, bang, I've got another lemon here. And what's under here? Let's have a look at the... And that's pretty much it. So we've got this great little splash image. Now, couple of issues here. I can see my hand and I can also see the skewer. So what I need to do is I just toggle on and off each layer until I find which layer that is, and I've identified it as the third layer. So what I'm going to do is add a layer mask, grab my brush, make sure it's 0 hardness, blend mode normal, opacity 100%. I'm going to start with a flow of around 50 and make sure that black is my foreground color. So wherever I paint with black with the layer mask selected, it's basically going to get rid of anything that I want to get rid of, which is my hand. So I'm basically brushing that and covering it up just like that, like magic. And I can get rid of the skewer as well. All right, now there's a couple of other things here. There's some sort of gray area here, so I want to find where that is. Not there. There it is. So it's this one here. So I can just see the edges of my fingers, and that's my arm there. So I'm going to add a little layer mask here and just do the same thing. Brush with black, and that will hide those areas. So get rid of my fingers there at the side that are holding there. And if I make a mistake, I can just zoom in. I've gone a little bit too far there. I can just toggle back to white. And because this is non-destructive editing, I can now bring that back. All right, and then toggle back to black. And I'm just going to clean up that edge. And see how, because I've got a really soft brush, I'm actually going into the edge of that lemon there. I'm going to now match the hardness of my brush with the edge of the lemon, so that when I do now clean that up, it's not going to cut into the lemon. And I'll just come back over the edge here, bring that back, and again toggle back to black, just clean up that edge there. All right, so just zoom out. And I think that looks pretty good. Hang on, I can just see, and there's a bit more of my hand there. So it's just a matter of toggling on and off, and you can find any little bits of, bamboo if you're using the bamboo. And there you go. So it's like this is 4 images combined, and I think it looks pretty good. One thing I don't like, I think this lemon here is a bit hot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the top layer. I'm going to come down to my adjustment layer and add a curves adjustment layer. So I'm just going to use one of the presets and go with darker. And that's going to just darken that. I might just darken that a titch more. Now, what you'll notice is I've darkened the entire image overall, which is not what I wanted to do. I just want to darken this lemon. So if I invert the layer mask, Command I is the shortcut. It's now black. It hides what I just did. It just hides the adjustment to darken the image overall. And now if I change my foreground color to white, select my brush tool, everywhere I brush will now apply that curves adjustment. So I can just brush over the lemon here and just bring in the detail a little bit. See, if I just brushed over that one, I make it darker. And if I want to reverse that, I just change my foreground color to white, and I've cleaned that up. And so that's pretty much it for merging the layers together. When you've got a black background and you change the blend mode to lighten, you can easily merge several layers together and take your splash photography to the next level. All right, so next level now, really give the image a bit more animation and life, is to convert your splash image to a cinemagraph. Now, what's really intriguing about a splash image as a cinemagraph is we've managed to freeze all this beautiful action of the lemons and the water splashes. Okay, so that's interesting enough, but then we add the little twist where I've got the mineral water at the bottom of the glass and the bubbles are moving. So when you post this on your website or social media, people are going to do a double take because they see that everything's frozen, and then they see the bubbles there, and it just makes a really cool image. So basically what you need to do is follow all the instructions that I gave you for shooting splash images using daylight. Now, if you want to shoot these indoors, you could use continuous lights. So just backlight the image. You could try using a lamp, or if you've got a continuous light, just use the similar position that I place the lights in for the flash photography tutorial that I ran through. So basically, I've done this one outside. I've used sunlight. I've made sure that my image is backlit. And so locked off the tripod, focused, got my focus point, locked focus, make sure I don't move anything at all. And so the first thing I'm going to do is, once I'm happy with the composition and I've poured my mineral water into the glass, I'm going to grab like a 30-second clip. So just flick on get my exposure right, flick on flick to movie mode, and just grab 15-30 seconds of the bubbles in the glass. Recording small movie clips is very simple. So to do it on your DSLR or mirrorless, just check out the instructions to find out how to actually turn the movie on. On my 5D Mark IV, there's a little icon that I just switch, that I go from camera to movie mode, switch that on, and then you'll get into your menu where you'll be able to see the different image sizes you can set your footage. Now, for this sort of thing, for creating GIFs, I like to use the recording quality size of 1920 pixels by 1080, and then I like to work at 59.94 frames per second. That's my favorite setting. And if you want to get nice smooth video, then I recommend you set your shutter speed at 2 times the frames per second that you're shooting. So if you're shooting at 59 frames per second, then you want to make sure that your shutter speed is around 1/125th. So roughly that, and that'll give you a nice even frame. It's not it'll still work for a cinemagraph. You don't have to be spot on. Just give it a go and grab a few seconds of clip and experiment, see how you go. So after I've grabbed my clip, I then switch back to still photography and grab a selection of splash photographs, the same way I did in the daylight splash photography tutorial. So grab a whole lot of different splash shots. Don't move the camera, don't change the settings, make sure everything stays the same. Okay, let's go to the editing. Alright, so I've loaded all my selects into Lightroom here, and basically, so I need to select an image to create as my still pick for my cinemagraph, and I'm going to choose this image here. So the first thing I'm going to do is edit the image, and what I'm going to do is I've already created a splash preset. Now, it's important that you have a preset, and I'll show you why that's important when I edit the cinemagraph in Photoshop. But basically, select your image, edit it as you want it to look, and then create a preset. So I'm going to place the splash preset on. So that's how I want it to look. That's how I want my GIF to look. So here's all the settings here. And to create your own preset, just come up to the top to this little plus symbol here, click on that, and I'm in the latest version of Lightroom, so click on the plus symbol, hit create preset, make sure that everything's checked. You can name your preset, you can put it in a group if you want, and then hit create. So I've already got one, so I don't need to do that. So I've named my preset, and it's in my user presets, and I've got it there. There it is. It's called Splash. So That's what you need to do. Okay, so once I've edited my image, saved the preset, I'm going to right click on this image, edit in Adobe Photoshop, and Photoshop will open that image. Okay, so here is my image with the preset applied, edited, ready to go. So that's the still component of my cinemagraph. Okay, so I've got everything frozen, and now I need to add the moving part, which is going to be in this section here. So in order to do that, I need to now open my movie clip. So make sure that when you take your movie clip, you name it and you place it in a folder where you can access it easily. So I'm going to now open my movie clip and scroll through and find that. Hit open, and Photoshop opens that, and you'll see that there's a timeline down the bottom. If you don't see the timeline when you open your movie clip, just go to Window and check Timeline. So if I hit play now, you're going to see that that's my movie clip. Now you can hear that because there was a little bit of ambient noise while I was filming, you can hear that now. So what you want to do is there's a little icon here for the sound. Just check that, and that will now silence my clip. So I've got my clip, and I've also got my original file. So I need to merge those, and what I actually need to do is cut out this section here, all right, of the image, and put my video little movie clip underneath so that it will be visible through here. So you'll have this whole image frozen except for this small image here, which will be moving. All right, so what I'm going to do is place my still image on top of my moving image. So the first thing I want to do is with my little clip, my film clip selected, when you open it up, you'll find that it comes in a video group. So what we want to do is firstly ungroup from layers so that it's in its own little smart object there. So it's on its own little layer. And now I'm going to select my raw file and just drag it on top. So just select the move button, and I'm going to place it on top of my image. So now there is a size discrepancy, so I'm going to just make sure that they're both the same size. So just size that down. You can go roughly to start with, because we can do an auto align to get them to both be the same size. So I've got my raw still image on top, my movie underneath. Okay, now what I need to find out is if they're both aligned, and they're pretty close, but I can use Photoshop now to help me. So I can go to edit, select both images, both layers, okay, and then go to edit, auto align layers, and hit auto. So that's just telling Photoshop that I want both the layers to be exactly aligned so that they're both the same, and hit OK. And Photoshop has now auto aligned those layers. So if I drop the opacity here, I can see that the glass and the background is lined up and they're both the same. And just bear in mind that it's only this section of the movie clip that we want to make visible. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm going to punch a hole in my still image to reveal my video underneath. Okay, so if we look down to the timeline here, you can see that I've got my still image on top and my video layer underneath. So I'm going to punch a hole in this image here to reveal the video that's underneath. And to do that, it's fairly simple. I've got my still image layer selected. I'm going to create a layer mask. I'm going to select my brush tool, make sure that my foreground color is black. I'm going to make my brush about 50% hardness. Blend mode is normal, opacity 100%, and I'm going to start with a flow of around 50%. All right, and I'm going to come right in here, and I'm basically going to make my brush small enough, and I'm going to brush on my top layer to reveal what's underneath. Okay, so I'm just going to mask out a little hole here, and I'll show you now. I'll hit play, and you can see that the bubbles there, and I'm just going to come in and shorten my original layer just so it matches my movie layer, so it's not too long. So just come in, grab the edge, and just bring it so that it, and I'll just make this a little bit smaller so I can see what I'm doing here, and bring that edge so that it matches. Okay, so now both my layers are the same size, and if I hit play, you can see that where I've punched that little hole, and sometimes Photoshop takes a little while to catch up, but now you can see those little bubbles there are appearing. So I'm going to continue now masking out this area. So I'll just hit stop there and make sure that my layer mask is selected, and I'm just going to brush in this little area here. Okay, and you want to kind of take your time with this and make sure that I've masked out that area of glass. I can make my brush a little bit smaller just to clean it all up. Okay, so I've just punched a little hole there in my glass. All right, so let's hit play again, and you can see that there are the bubbles. Now, this is all looking okay, but if I stop my video, you can see that my still image, that's been edited. I already edited that in Lightroom, but if I turn this off, you can see that the video clip that I filmed is still a raw file and it hasn't been edited, so it doesn't look the same as my still image. I want them to match. So this is why I wanted you to create a preset, because I'll show you what you can do, and this is pretty cool. So what I want to do is match the two. So now I can select my little clip, film clip here, and I can come to filter, camera raw filter. I'm going to get a new dialog box that comes up, and this looks exactly the same as Lightroom. So you've got the basic develop module and you've got all the same sliders. Now I could have just remembered where everything was and just matched it. Okay, that's one way to do it, but there's a better way. So basically I can come down to the settings, and this little icon here is the presets. If I click on that, you'll notice that I've got down the side, all these presets are exactly the same presets as I have in my Lightroom menu. So I'll just show you. I'll come back to Lightroom here, and you can see I've got all those same presets as you saw in the camera raw setting. They're all there. So what I'm going to do now is apply the splash preset to my video clip. So let's come back to Photoshop, and what I need to do first is make sure that I've got my movie clip layer selected, and what I need to do before I can apply the filter to that layer is I need to convert it to a smart object. So click on the layer, right click, convert to smart object. Okay, now this will make it easy to convert all the images in that video clip, because if you think about a video clip, it's frames, a number of frames per second, so we're going to edit each frame. Now before you had to do this individually. This allows you to do it. You converting it to a smart object allows you to edit each little frame in that movie clip to look exactly the same as the still image, so everything looks amazing. So at the moment, you can see that the water in the background from the video clip is a slightly different color, so it doesn't quite match. So I've got my movie clip layer selected, and I've converted it to a smart object. I'm going to come to Filter, Camera Raw. I've got my dialog box open. I'm going to come down to this little icon here, Presets. I'm going to scroll down to my Splash preset, which is in the User Presets. Click on the splash. It applies the preset and hit OK. And now, if I switch off the top layer and hit play, it'll take a minute. It takes a little minute to get going, but now you'll see as it goes through, it now is edited. Each frame in that clip is now edited exactly the same. So you can see it starts to go slow, and now I've picked up the pace. So my entire clip is now edited in exactly the same way using the same preset as I edited my still image. And so if I click on the still image now, I'll just stop the click on that. There's my still image, hit play. I've got that little, and again, it takes a little minute to get going to its full speed, but you can see I've punched that hole in that top image, and as it picks up a little bit of speed there, I've created my cinemagraph, and the movie clip matches my still image, and it looks really good. All right, so that was just shot in daylight. Honestly, it took me like 5 minutes to shoot the thing. This is a great way to add value for your client. So if you're doing a lifestyle shoot, you might have the client ask for, can you get a few shots of the drink as well, or just do some for folio or for cinema, for your social media feed. People find these images intriguing because at first glance you see that it's a stopped image, and then you notice this little detail. They're fun to do. It is really easy. So once you've got that, then you want to save that. So it's File, Export, and then you can click Save for Web Legacy, and you'll get a little dialog box that comes up. All right, and so you've got GIF. You can name it. You can use a preset, but I've got just follow these. You've got GIF or GIF. I think GIF is the correct word, but we say GIF in Australia. And you can actually size it down. So if it'll tell you how big it is. If you don't want it to be too big a file, you can make it say 50% of the file. And again, there is a detailed tutorial how to create cinemagraphs that you can follow along with, that goes through all of these settings, and then you can hit save and it'll export it. So you can hit save and Photoshop will ask you where you want it to save to. All right, and I've named it Splash Photography, and I'm going to put it in my high-speed photography folder. Hit save, and it saves it as a GIF or GIF. And then if you want to just check out how that works, just open your browser. All right, and then I can go and find my image and just drop it into my browser, and there it is. There's my little GIF, all done. It took me longer to explain it than to actually do it. So there you go. That's next level stuff. Hope you go out and experiment with that and do share your results. Enjoy.